Melissa.
We are.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight and welcome to tonight's presentation. Tonight we are joined by certified holistic nutritionist and chocolatier Maureen Abuzik as she walks us through the nutritional advantages of making your own chocolates at home. Reminder, please remain muted during the presentation. You can send any questions you have throughout in the chat, and as always, there will be an opportunity at the end to unmute for a Q&A. Thank you to tonight's featured sponsor, the Poolesville Veterinary Clinic. If you enjoyed tonight's presentation, make sure to check out our website and register to join us again next week. Without further ado, Maureen, take it away.
Thank you very much, Dottie. I appreciate it. And thank you all for being here and joining me. I have a love of food, and it wasn't until I started selling chocolate that I found out that not everybody loves chocolate, but that's okay, because we all have our little vices. But what I love about chocolate is that it really doesn't have to be a vice. It's not a guilty pleasure. It can be a guilt-free pleasure. And I'd like to give you a little bit of background on why that is. I'm going to be showing you a couple of things here, and then we'll make some chocolate together. So let's see if my computer is going to cooperate. I was trying to figure out how to get all the things I wanted to show you into one spot. Okay, we are being live streamed. So this is just to show you how simple it is to make chocolate, if it will let it play. So you too can make all of your own chocolate as simply as that. And it's a little thing that I put together just to show you how easy, and it's easier than going to the store and buying a chocolate bar that you melt. This is an article that I'm happy to share that talks about chocolate and heart health, and that the British Medical Journal has identified chocolate as being particularly beneficial for heart health, and that those who consumed more dark chocolate in a week, I think we all know this by now, but they have a lower incidence of heart attacks and also have a biologically younger heart. I'm going to show you this at the end if we have time. It's a really cool clip about how chocolate helps you grow your stem cells, which is very cool. This is where I'm going to pause for just a moment, and because my camera is going to be on the other side, I can't show you this simultaneously. But if you wanted to make chocolates and you ran into Michael's and you got those little chocolate chips, those little discs that they sell right next to the mold section where the molds are, this is what your nutrition facts are. And I think that because of my view, I'm not able to zoom because I'm just not being savvy at the moment. But right here, it's going to tell us what the ingredients are. The first ingredient is sugar, and then it has vegetable oils, which includes palm oil and hydrogenated vegetable oil. And then we have cocoa, which it's just cocoa powder. And then they have whey in there, a powdered whey, I guess, for the milk chocolate flavor. And I can't zoom in, but if we look at the nutritional facts down here at the bottom, it has very little iron and really not many nutrients to speak of. So I'm going to go ahead and change my camera over. I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to bump over there and talk to you about chocolate. See you in a second. All right, so I had way too much fun. Now, I set this up. I can't tell if you can see me. So you can tell me if I'm okay. I'm gonna set my chocolate that's in the pan and leave that for just a minute. This is my spread. I have lots of chocolate over here, but that little disc that a lot of people buy at Michael's and they make their candies out of, and I know they turn out how they're supposed to. They're very shiny, crisp, but they actually tell you do not refrigerate and do not freeze. I wonder why, what would happen to it. They say if, it can separate, the ingredients can separate. And you should be able to eat as much as you want of a natural food without worrying about what ingredients they've mixed together that maybe don't come naturally. So I have, chocolates they're grown in the tropical climates. Back in ancient Mayan times and the Incas, they actually used the cacao bean as currency. So with a barter and trade, the cacao bean was prized above all else. And so if you had a cacao pod that you had harvested, you could use that to get other things you might need. And it's also called theobroma, which is the food of the gods. So it was seen, and that's Greek actually. So when it was discovered, when the, I don't know if it was the Spanish probably, but when it was discovered back in in South America and brought back, then it was labeled theobroma as the food of the gods. So this is kind of cool. I can't get a cacao pod for you, sorry, but I have almost the next best one. This is crazy. This comes from David Wolf. I don't know, I'm sure you can't see that from this far away, but he has his Hawaii plantation and he has cacao trees there. And these little gems that I have here, I'm going to set the bag down. Again, I'm not sure how close I am. When you open up a cacao pod, which is a big yellowish pod that it can be streaked with purples and reds and brown hues. When you open that up, there's a pulp in there. And this is freeze-dried pulp with the cacao beans inside. And they have this pulp. And they eat the pulp, which is very nourishing food. And then inside the pulp, we have, and I have far more cacao beans than I realized, but we have cacao beans. I'm going to open everything fresh while I'm on the call with you instead of opening them ahead of time, for the most part. So this being the cacao bean, which still has its shell on it. And if you get cacao nibs, they blow this shell off. They take the bean, which is actually a nut, but I think it's so similar to coffee beans that they call them cacao beans. They take this and crunch it up, and that becomes our cacao nibs, the little bits that people like to speckle on their yogurt or ice cream, maybe even in your chocolates. So we go from this cool thing to this, and then we have our cacao nibs. And what chocolate companies will do is take all the beans, take off all the shells, grind it up, and then you have two ways of grinding that. You can stone grind it or use a more industrial metal grinder. Those who stone grind it, my sister has told me, I don't like stone ground chocolate. And I'm thinking, why do you not like it? It's the best. That's what I sell. I sell stone ground chocolate. And just depends on how much you grind it. It can be gritty, or you can grind it until it's very, very fine and a very smooth finish. And what you get when you grind it up is your cacao paste. I have lots of samples of this, and we're going to talk about that. If you go to the more industrial manufacturers of chocolate, they use metal grinders, and they've actually found that a chocolate, don't mean to break anyone's heart, but a chocolate bar like Hershey's can be found to have heavy metals in there because just those fine particles from the metal grinders can get into the cacao. So they do the same process, but instead of being stone ground, it's ground with metal machinery. I've been having trouble talking all week, so sorry. But when you do that, you come up with your paste, and it's also called cocoa mass. And we actually have somebody in town who has a cacao orchard, cacao plantation, which is really cool. I think I still have some of their chocolate over there, but it's usually this big ball, this big mass. When you buy and make your own chocolate, you're not getting soy, partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, whey powder with some cocoa powder. You're actually getting the bean, the entire bean that's been ground up very, very finely. Or if you want to vary your taste and have something with a little bit of a different texture, you can get something a little grittier. But you take the cacao paste, and that's what we use to make chocolates. So the difference between a chocolate maker and a chocolatier, a chocolate maker goes from this to the bean to the cocoa mass and then makes chocolates. A chocolatier takes this stuff that's already processed, even though it's lightly processed, relatively speaking, but then we take this and make chocolate candies out of it. So everything you see that I touched today, just to let you know, is for consumption in the house. So I'm not too worried about putting my fingers on things because we're just going to be eating it here. That would be different if I were making something or creating a kit for you. I don't touch everything. What I have here, what I'd like to show you are the different brands. I think if you registered, you did get my information about all the products that I use and how I go about making my chocolates. So this particular one is Wilderness Poets, and they come out in these squares. And sometimes when they get old and broken, they can get a little bit of dust on top, and that dust is a lighter color. And you can actually tell it's aged a little bit more. Maybe it's been sitting a little longer. This is a good batch. And the reason I like to make kits and sell those is because I've already been through the process of which brands are good brands. And also if I get a bad batch in, that's on me. You know, I wouldn't put that in chocolate, and I will show you what that looks like. So that's one brand. Another brand that I like is Terrasol. So this is a cacao paste from them. And this is a batch that came that had clearly been sitting in the Amazon warehouse for a little while. And feel free to unmute and call out if you can't see anything, or if you'd like to see something closer, that's fine. But you can see it's much lighter color and dustier. And that just means that when they broke these pieces up, they have a lot of surface area, and then they sat for a while. They also might have gotten warm and then cool again. Sometimes if you get stuff in the summertime, it can come and actually be liquid cacao butter that will cool off in one big blob, which is not what you want. So if you get something that looks like this, you know, see if you can send it back, because that's going to probably have a little aged flavor to it. Favorite though that I use is Viva Pura. Sorry, there it is. Now, two things that are nice about this. One, it comes in these little discs. Don't want to touch these too much. So these come in little disc shapes. Now what they've done here is they've taken the cacao mass they've gently melted it because it still is raw. And these are all organic and fair trade, sustainably grown. But they then melt it down into these consistent shapes. Sometimes they still melt, sometimes they still get broken. And for example, I had some, you can see the light colored on there. And I had a bag that all the ones on the bottom I could tell had gotten warm somewhere and been melted a little bit, but most of them were still good. So I felt it was okay to use, but I would never use one that looks like that, just because of I don't know how it melted, how hot it got, or what happened. So the other nice thing about these is the consistent shape and weight. So when I make chocolates and I figure out how much I want to make and how I want to do that, I go by weight. I use my scale and I fill everything that way. And if I feel like counting, I know, okay, I think I've got 30 of these, and then I've got 11 or 12 of the cacao paste. So it makes it nice. It's a very consistent weight versus the other ones I showed you from here. They could have a big blob, they could have a few smaller chunks, and so it doesn't melt consistently either, but it still is a very good flavor. The flavor, speaking of that, the Viva Pura used to come from Ecuador, but now they are primarily from Peru. The Wilderness Toad is still from Ecuador. There are 3 varieties, Criollo, Forastero, and I'm not going to remember the third one. Try something, believe it or not, for 3. But the Criollo is the most common one, and Forastero is less common, but it has a slightly different flavor. And the Criollo has a smoother flavor, and so that's probably why it's the more popular one. And then the third one that I can't remember the name of is a combination of those two, kind of a hybrid of the other 2. So you have Ecuadorian and Peru, those are the 2 main ones. Kind of a funny story. We went to New Zealand. I was so excited because I just assumed that they would get their cacao from Africa. Africa is another great producer of cacao beans. And I went to buy some chocolate and asked where they got their cacao. And she said, Nestle. I said, oh. She said, yes, in the US. I said, oh, okay. So I have not, as far as I know, tried African, but probably a Lindt chocolate might combine some of the African cacao, and all the big companies are going to buy from where they can around the world, bring them in and make them homogeneous, blend them together and have a more homogeneous flavor. What's nice about making your own is that there's a unique flavor. It's pretty consistent, but there can be some nuances to that flavor every time. And depending on where you go, there are a couple places that are the wholesalers for these guys, and you can really explore a lot of different flavors of cacao that way. So I'm going to set those there for just a little bit instead of trying to pour them back in while we are on. I have that over here. The other ingredients I use, so I prefer to do the cacao paste because, one, it's just the cacao and I know what I'm getting. When you see something, I'm going to touch this one. When you see something with color, color tends to indicate nutrients. That's why we say eat the rainbow, because if you eat red, you're going to get lutein. So that's in tomatoes. That's why they say to eat your tomatoes. If you have yellow, you can get your folates and your folic acid and some of your nutrients that are in yellow leaves or yellow fruits and vegetables. So cacao actually has purples in here, which is nervous system protection. And then of course it's brown, helps with digestion. Imagine that connection. but it's got a lot of really good nutrients. So I prefer dark chocolate to white chocolate. And they say dark chocolate's better. It's like resveratrol. Dark red wine has more resveratrol in it, and it's healthier for you. Dark cacao has more of those nutrients that you're looking for, and it doesn't take much to get those in and to bolster your health and your immune system. So I'm going to slide this one over here. When I'm making chocolate, then also it's a great way, everyone who likes the flavor of chocolate and who likes the flavor of sweetened chocolate, you can take that as your base and do with it whatever you would like. You can add things to it. So what I want to do today is just show you how I go about putting all the ingredients together. And then this has been the cacao paste, but then we have the other items that go in here in my own personal recipe that I've developed. And then we'll talk about the other stuff you can do with it. So my most important piece of equipment is my scale, because as I said, I don't do things by measurement, I do them by weight. That has given me a much more consistent batch every time. And I don't know if the exact ingredient was in the document that you received, but feel free to write this down. So I take my nifty mason jar, and I had an empty one. I'll have to get an empty one. As I slide over here. I'll be getting up and sitting down. I have my chocolates there, and you'll see all stages of everything. So I apologize for that. I think what happened is I used it. So I'm just going to put 3 ounces of cacao paste in here. So whichever cacao paste that you have found that has a good flavor for you and is consistent and that you can find, I put 3 ounces in. And we'll talk about also putting in some powder. So I'm going to use this one and just slide this in. My kind of rule of thumb, this should be what I'm looking for, yep. My rule of thumb, I'll get there. The rules of thumb yet. All right. A little bit pre-measured. I hear thunder coming in. So once I get to about 3 ounces, then I'm going to pause there. The next thing that goes in is cacao butter. Now, again, you're going to see this brand a lot. And I also have the Terrasol. These are butter wafers. This just says cacao butter. They both have really good flavor. Their paste is better. So sometimes to add a unique flavor, I will use this. I'll combine them. So I like this brand for that as well. So I'm going to slide that on by. And I put in 1 ounce of the wafers. I don't know. Now I can count them also. There are 10 or 11, make up what I'm looking for. After resetting my scale, this should be having here exactly what I need. Bags down, pretty good. Okay, and then resetting that scale again, I put in an equal amount of coconut oil. The reason I do this, well, coconut oil is very good because it's got a very stable saturated fatty acid profile. It's got medium chain fats in there, and those are good for cognitive ability. The particular saturated fat they say protects the myelin sheath, so the nerve connections in the brains and the brain between your cells also will help support cell membrane integrity. And it tastes good. When you take a bite of chocolate, this will melt first because it has a higher melting point. So it gives you that smooth consistency in the chocolate when you eat it. My spoon is over there, but I'm not going to get up again. So I'm just going to put in an ounce of coconut oil. And if you have a kit, this is what you get. You get all of these ingredients. Without my fingers on it. Definitely not. So you get all the ingredients. I'm going to tuck this away. And then the last thing I put in is a sweetener. There are two sweeteners. Actually, there are several sweeteners that we can use. One is honey. I actually love to use Lewis Orchard honey. So when they're open, I'll go grab some Lewis Orchard honey and use that in here. Honey is very sweet and it combines a slightly different flavor with the chocolate. And I find that I use less. So if you're looking to have a slightly lower calorie count or use a little less sweetener, honey would be a good way to go, because it's, when you use raw honey, your body utilizes the nutrients more easily. It does not increase your blood sugar levels as quickly. And since you use less, you actually have a slightly lower calorie count. So if you like the flavor of honey, you like the sweetness, that's a good one to use. This jar in particular right here has already crystallized, so I'm not going to try to pour any honey out for you in this batch. But you can just put this in warm water and have it melt gently, or this is going to be doing that anyway, so I just take it out by the scoop, plop it in there, and for this I would use an immersion blender just to make sure everything blends very well. If I use honey. We can also use maple syrup, which is what I'm going to use in here. Maple syrup is actually high in manganese. It also has other trace minerals and nutrients in it, which I wasn't aware of until I did some research on this subject. So maple syrup, as long as, again, it's not raw, because maple syrup isn't made that way, but you want to go with organic. Make sure it's actually pure maple syrup that hasn't been combined with any other foods, like high fructose corn syrup. They tend to cross honey with high fructose corn syrup and send them, use that in the bottled conventional honey you see on the shelf. It may be a mixture. So you want to go with the real deal to make sure you're getting 100%. The other things you can use over there is maple sugar is a nice option. It melts very easily and smoothly, just like the maple sugar does. Things that blend in and are good for blood sugar levels are date sugar, but that does not melt as well. And so you might get a little bit of a gritty texture to it. And the other is coconut sugar, which I like. I enjoy using that for the flavor. Again, it doesn't necessarily melt down as finely. It's not as gritty as date sugar, but so I'd use an immersion blender for that to get everything mixed in. And again, I put approximately the same amount of sweetener as I have of the cacao paste. With the honey, I use a little less. Most of them I use a little bit less, but with the maple syrup, I do 3 ounces of paste. I'll do 3 ounces of maple syrup. So I'm just going to alter that, throw that in. And if I want to use a little bit less, I can do that. It's however you want to taste. And this is something I like to use the maple syrup because I don't need to use an immersion blender. Once everything is melted, gently in the warm water, I can just whisk it and it mixes right in and it's nice. And if it's not quite sweet enough, I can always add more. So it's better to do less up front. And the little discs that they sell you, they do all that for you. It's already the first ingredient is sugar. And so you have no choice but to have 18 grams of sugar per serving, which is an outrageous amount of sugar, with no nutrients. The nutrients have likely been taken out because they use processed sugar. So you at least want to get some trace minerals or B vitamins. You might as well. If you're going to have your sweets, make it excellent, right? So putting that aside, so pausing here for just a moment. Actually, one more thing. And you do not want to forget this, and that's salt. A lot of people say, well, I need to be on a low salt diet, and that's fine. You want to use, but the reason we need salt in here is because any type of stimulant is going to alter your nervous system, alter your body chemistry, even just a little bit. Caffeine is a nervous system stimulant, so it stimulates the nervous system. Cacao doesn't have a lot of caffeine in it. It has something called theobromine. And what that does is it's a dilator. So people who have asthma attacks, they have actually done studies that show eating chocolate, eating dark chocolate is almost as effective or as effective as an inhaler in opening up the bronchial tubes to allow air to come in. But it also opens up and dilates the blood vessels so that more blood flows. That's why people can think more clearly when they've eaten some chocolate. But we don't want to stimulate, even though it's a dilator, it still is exciting things. Sometimes people get heart palpitations if they have too much chocolate. So in order to counteract that, we take a very alkaline substance, which is the salt, and add just a smidge. So for one batch of this, I actually just use a 1/4 teaspoon, and you need to have that in there because otherwise you're stimulating without bringing in the minerals that your body needs to metabolize the cacao, but also to calm everything back down again and keep things in balance. So I always use Celtic sea salt, or this is Redmond salt, the sea salt from Utah, from the ancient seas that are underground. Himalayan salt is an excellent choice. Hawaiian salt, Icelandic salt. There are lots of fun ones out there. They're very high naturally in minerals. If you use just regular table salt, like a Morton's table salt, they actually strip the minerals from that because those are the minerals they use to put in vitamins and sell them off. And what you're left with is NaCl, just pure salt. And a lot of people who have trouble with hypertension and eating salt, it's because it's just the salt is too strong and you don't have the minerals to balance everything out. So you don't want a salt that's 98% NaCl, sodium. You want to have something that has some color to it, which shows that the minerals are in there. And they're trace, there's not a lot, but it makes a difference. So I put just 1/8 of a teaspoon of this in here. And then from this point, this would go be warmed up, and then we can add all the fun stuff in. Do you have any questions? I know we're going to have a Q&A at the end, but this is kind of a middle point. I don't want anybody to forget if they have any questions.
Feel free to unmute and ask any questions you have.
And if not, that's okay too. Pen and paper. You can write down a question or put it in the chat. And hopefully if I don't get to it tonight, if you do have a question in the chat, they can let me know and I can contact you. So I'm just going to put the lid on this one and save it for later. Again, this is family chocolate. But what I have done, I'm going to set my very important piece of equipment aside, and I'm going to grab some cacao that I have already heated. Now you'll see I just have a pan. It has hot water. So I just keep, I don't use a double boiler. I like these little jars, which are, you know, I just grab a used one because I never need the lid. I just use it to make the chocolate in. But after measuring, heat the water, turn everything off, and then set it in because we don't want the chocolate at the bottom to get overheated. If we can keep it at a very low temperature, below 118, preferably below 115, then that's going to keep more of the nutrients available, the ones that would normally cook off. Cacao is actually pretty high in vitamin C, but because it's so highly processed and heated, that goes away, right? We don't want to heat any vitamin C, but so I just melt it at a very low temperature and then stir it. This one in particular has maple syrup again, which lets me stir it up without using an immersion blender. You can probably tell, maybe, if I get a little closer, it's definitely separated. All the coconut oil is at the top and the cacao, which is melted, is at the bottom because I haven't done any stirring of this at all. I just stuck it in the pan a little bit ago, so be ready. And I could taste it, but since I use the same recipe every time, I know that it is going to be just as sweet as I like it to be. But now you have your base, and even if you want to make it a little bit sweeter, because you might throw some healthy stuff in there, that's okay. Do that because you're using a sweetener that might already have B vitamins, might have nutrients that are beneficial. So it's okay to use a little bit more because then what we can do is take this base, and I call cacao a gateway health food. People call sugar a gateway drug, which we don't want to have, but you can have a gateway health food because we can take this guilty pleasure. We've already made it healthier by making our own from sustainably sourced, highly nutritious cacao that's raw and very true to its origins. And then we can add to it. So we have a lot of things we can do. Where to go? Okay, let's start with flavors.
I see a question in the chat, Maureen, that says, is the 118 temperature the water or the chocolate mixture?
That's a great question. It's the chocolate mixture. So if I really am concerned, if I have a great batch, if I've gotten special raw cacao and I want to keep everything raw, I will stand and stir constantly as much as I can, and I keep a thermometer in there to make sure that it doesn't get above 115. But and I'm babysitting it and stirring a lot. But for the most part, I don't worry too much about that. It just depends on what I'm making it for. But it's the chocolate itself. So your water is going to be a lot hotter. And I also use a heavy bottom pan, and I use, if I'm not using this, I use a really thick Pyrex measuring cup. So to add flavor, we can have vanilla. Now, you can use vanilla extract. That's not a big deal. I mean, that's a good way to go. But for fun, I got pure vanilla powder. And I put, this is a very strong flavor. If you get vanilla powder, if you get vanilla beans, you probably know if you've used those and you scrape the beans off and crush them up, that it's a strong flavor. I've already put this in here because I wanted to kind of mix it in while everything was melting and have it incorporate a little bit more. But I'll show you what this looks like. Wish you could smell it. But so this is a very thick, moist one, and I just got it to try. And this is from the Wilderness Poets group of people. So this is a fun little addition. And if you like the taste of vanilla, it's a very fresh taste. And again, it just, that will last, that jar would last a long time. It'll probably go bad before I use it all. The couple of other things we can do. A lot of people like mint chocolate. I'm not going to mix it with the vanilla, but I guess I could. I actually don't use peppermint extract. It didn't occur to me when I started looking into making mint chocolate. I found a peppermint essential oil that's food grade, and to me, it has a different flavor. It reminds me more of a peppermint patty than some of the peppermint extracts that I've tried are more like a candy cane to me. And this is more like a mint peppermint patty. I want you to smell everything and you can't. Anyway, so that's just an idea, just something to think about depending on where you want to source and what scent or flavor you want. But this is a very strong flavor and it doesn't take much, maybe I use less than a teaspoon in here. I think I only do 10 drops. I think 15 drops is a teaspoon and I do 10. And that would make a nice mint. And that's why I call mine mint with a hint of chocolate, because it can be very strong. But again, you can start small, whip it in. When you freeze it, it changes the flavor a little bit. So it doesn't change the flavor, but the strength of it is a little different. So if you sample it here and it tastes good, don't add to it, because when you freeze it, when it cools, that mint's going to be just a little bit more powerful. So you'd want to err on the side of a little bit less mint before you do that, before you freeze. Another flavor I like to do is the berry. Now this, you can do, I used to make rainbow chocolates. You could do blueberry powder, strawberry powder. So I get freeze-dried strawberries and just crush those up. If you want to go really healthy, very tart and high vitamin C, there's camu berry, there's acai berry. Those are, and goji berry is another one. Goji berry is, I think it's a great flavor with chocolate. It's very good for vision. This is a mixture of different ones that I use, and we're going to talk about this more in a minute because I have something to show you. So if you want to have something that was a berry flavor, you can add some of this in. Whole food supplement has, each serving of this has all your vitamin C for the day. So that's a great way to get vitamin C in. If it's not that tart, actually, this will surprise you. It's more of a mild flavor, but I make very, very, very tart berry by adding in a little bit of vitamin C. And this vitamin C in particular has a really tart flavor, but it brings out the berry. And I really getting a lot of vitamin C in there. So this would be something if you like that berry flavor, if you like a tart chocolate, but you don't want to feel bad about eating chocolate all the time, this is great. You use your honey for your B vitamins, you add some berry, add your vitamin C, and you're really getting a nutritious snack as opposed to feeling like you're eating something you're not supposed to be. So I'm going to tuck that one away. Some other fun things that I do. If I want to have breakfast and I don't have time, I will add in collagen powder or a protein powder mix. And that definitely changes the texture. So I'm not crunching down on a nice chocolate that's going to melt in my mouth and feel really smooth. It definitely has more of a texture to it and not that bite. It's much softer to bite into even when it's cold. But if I'm on the run, I can just use this. I could even make a granola bar and I could dip it in the chocolate or spread this on top. And then I'm getting collagen or protein along with the nutrients that are in the chocolate itself. So this is one of my, or if you're making a smoothie, you can do this, throw your chocolate in and just blend it up. That's another good thing to do. If you really, really, really want chocolate flavor, these are the Cacao Nibs. I got this from Wegmans, organic. It's a very good price. And for Cacao Nibs, it's a good flavor. It's not bad. And one other thing I have not tried yet. I saw this sweetener. It's called Dolcetti, and it's concentrated apple juice. It says it's low glycemic, so I need to investigate that a little bit more. But if you really need a very low glycemic sweetener, there's yacon syrup is a good one. If you can find birch syrup, I would recommend that. And then there's this one I'm going to try. I'll let you know how it tastes with chocolate. But these are just things you can explore and you can have fun while you try it out. One more thing that I add in mushroom powder. And they say if you have never tried Reese, then you've never learned about it. Medicinal mushrooms seems like a really weird thing. But maybe by now we've heard of lion's mane being good for memory. Cordyceps is another mushroom. It's very good to oxygenate your blood. In fact, if you use too much of it, you can, I think they used to accuse you of doping in the Olympics, or there's something, maybe instead of using the substances you're not allowed to, the athletes were starting to use cordyceps because it helps your blood oxygenate so effectively. There's a lot of research done on all of these things. So this is another thing that I will throw in that helps me get nutrition in, and the chocolate masks the flavor. So I don't have to feel like I'm drinking a smoothie with the powder in there. You know, if I can't hide it in a smoothie, I can definitely hide it in chocolate. So I can open this up. And last year, we didn't really delve into all the kind of crazy stuff I put in here. So this year I thought we could. So it's pretty low. I didn't get too much, but I'm just going to sprinkle that in. And then once I stir this in, then I'm going to pick what kind of mold I want to put it in. And then we're going to have a little bit of fun with that. So stand up again. This mold is just, I like to use ice cream trays. This one is the kind that the ice cubes go into the water bottle. I call these my sticks. And this is fun. I break these out and sprinkle them with pumpkin pie spice or cinnamon. I think that's a really good flavor. Another great way of getting some nutrients in. Cinnamon is good for your heart. If I use the regular ice cube tray, you can add, it's a great one for adding nuts and more chunky things. And I make my stones, so I have sticks and stones. And these make rather thick chocolates. But if you want to have something a little bit more delicate or more chocolate candy-like, we have molds, lots and lots and lots of molds. So these are flowers, for example. This is made of silicone. It's very flexible. It can freeze. They actually say you can cook with these, but I don't think I would put it in an oven higher than 300, although I think they say you can, but freezes very well. Put the chocolates in, and once they freeze, some recipes will say you only need to freeze it for about 10 minutes. Really, it's more of an hour. If you are layering, then you can do 10 minutes at a time, just enough time to get it to set, and then add the next layer. And I tried that today, actually, and I'll show you, we'll see how it worked out. So that's, this is a very easy mold to get from Amazon, and they have lots of fun, different shapes and colors. There's colors over there. This is polycarbonate of a plastic. Chocolate does not stick to this. It pops out very easily. It's nice because it's not as flimsy. This has to go on a cutting board when I want to freeze it. Otherwise, the chocolate will spill and roll, obviously. But this is more sturdy, and I can just stick everything in here. And what I did that was so silly at the beginning is instead of using these nice cavities here for the chocolate, I turned it upside down and made a huge chocolate bar, but it was fun. And we're going to do something like that right now, actually. The other things real quick, everybody loves like a Reese's peanut butter cup. So these are very big molds for that, and they have smaller ones. But the way we do that, just painting the sides, filling it with whatever you would like on the inside, and then putting the chocolate on top. It's a fun way to layer. And sometimes I'll take these and I'll stack them together and make a big cake thing. And you could do that and then dip it in chocolate separately and have a little mound of chocolate that you can share with people and cut up. So once we have all of our goodies mixed in here, we needn't stop there. We can, so I had peanut butter cup. This is cashew butter. Sometimes I would make, use cashew butter in the middle of this. And then I have way too much stuff right here in my line of vision that hopefully you can't see everything, which is why I'm looking for everything. So this is Wilderness Poets has a kit. It comes with cacao paste, this Wilderness Delight, wild mixed delight, and the pure vanilla, maple sugar to add in as your sweetener, and then some molds so that you can make your own chocolate. So if you want to go to Wilderness Poets, buy a gift for somebody, that's something you could do as well. But I'm going to take their mixture that I got, and I'm going to take the chocolate I just made, and I think I'm going to use these. I didn't really make a full batch right there to use the underside, which is what I would usually do. I'm going to use these and just plop this in there underneath. And these are, this particular mix is organic. I don't know if it's raw. I think it is, but it's pistachios, pecans, mulberries, and coconut. So the mulberry for that little bit of sweetness, very high in, relatively speaking, high in fiber and protein. So just putting those in, just a thin layer in the bottom. And I'm just going to make a few. And then pour as much or as little on top. And since I'm just going to make a few really, really big ones. And regrettably, I can't show you how these turn out because they won't be frozen in time. I could put them in the freezer though and see how they are. All right, so just layered it on top and it'll soak through obviously. And then when we turn it over, we'll have a nice chocolate bar, chocolate on the bottom with the fruit showing on the top. Excuse me just a moment. for the final act. Okay, so the one other thing that we can do, the reason I like dark chocolate, again, I've mentioned, is because it has all the nutrients in it. White chocolate, not so much. Sorry if you're a white chocolate fan, but I did buy this brand. This is my favorite brand of chocolate. If I'm not going to make it and I just need to go eat it, this is 90% cacao. Anything else is really too sweet for me, but it's a very smooth stone ground chocolate. But this is white chocolate. And if you look, it doesn't have, I'm just looking at the back, like it has no iron in it, which normally really good cacao, you can almost use a magnet on it and have it cling to it. But what's fun about white chocolate is you can melt it and mix it colors in, and you can make fun stuff. So I melted some of this and I mixed it in, or I mixed into it the berry powder, which is pink. And then I put it into my chocolate mold. And these molds are fun. Never done this before. And actually, I'm going to use this to put them into, because that surface looks a little damp. And can you see that mold? And there's the chocolate inside. And now let's see how it looks when they come out. All right, now I did two different things with these chocolates. Oh, it's already started to melt. A little warm in my house. So I'm going to grab just a plastic bag so I can hold it without getting it too messy. I'll put it on my hand. Can you see? Can you see the color? So there's pink on top. That's the white chocolate that's been mixed with the berry powder. And I put that into the mold first. And then I put the regular chocolate on top to make a special colored candy. And the other shape out of the same mold, I'm just not going to try to keep them from melting. Oh well. Same mold, but I just did the pink part differently. So it's just that top middle part. And here I have a different kind of mold, and there's the pink on top. And again, I'm going to push them into here, and we're going to see how they turned out. So this one is the chocolate I put in first, and then I put the pink in the bottom. And my idea was to fill this little hole with some cream and then have a chocolate there. So there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with chocolates. And all of this is relatively healthy. You don't have to, have just one piece or worry about what you have for dinner before you have your dessert. And as I said, I have chocolate sometimes for breakfast, depending on what goodies I put in there. So this really melted, but that's okay. That is just all this crazy stuff is a lot of fun, and it's healthy. It's a gateway health food. It's a great way to get some nutrients in you that maybe you wouldn't otherwise, like the medicinal mushrooms that you really can't taste in chocolate. And it's also a fun gift to give to people or share. So thank you very much for joining me. If you have any questions, let me know.
I have a question.
Yes.
One of the things that I really want to do is chocolate covered almonds. And obviously I don't need a mold for those, but how do I just put them on wax paper after I dip them?
Yes, if you dip them, so I'm assuming you're using a sieve or some kind of strainer.
I have no idea what I'm using. I need you to tell me that.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure
because I've never done it before.
I've struggled with that because my goal is to come up with a really delicious chocolate covered cacao bean. From my experience, it's can be messy. So I have to figure out how to make it less messy. But I use a strainer. So put whatever it is I want to coat. You need to do it a couple of times. You can dip it into the chocolate that's melted and lift it up and then put it separate on wax paper or parchment paper and freeze it. And then once it's frozen, do it over again. And what I've tried to do is just make sure that I'm turning it so that if I have the almond setting on one side every time, I want to make sure to turn it over. The other thing would be to simply space them out on wax paper and then pour the chocolate on top, or I spoon. I'm very patient, and then freeze it, turn it over, and do the same process on the other side. That would be another way of doing it. A little bit more time consuming, but I don't mind that. And it doesn't coat it necessarily as evenly, but maybe it does. It just depends on.
Well, the mix that you put in and then pour the chocolate on top, maybe that's the easiest way to do it, is just get a mold, put the almonds in, and then pour the chocolate on top, and they can be on the bottom of a mold plate.
You can do that, but I think the wax paper on a tray would be just as effective there. If you're just going to pour the chocolate on top,
right,
and let it freeze, and then you just have to turn them all over and then pour the chocolate on top to coat the second side.
So how long do you freeze them for?
Well, if you're doing something like that, you need to do 10 to 15 minutes just to get it to set. So when you turn it over, it doesn't stick to the wax paper or melt off. But when you're making chocolates, or when you get done covering them and you want to freeze them until they're done, then you'd want to freeze them for at least an hour.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And if I can use that question also, I was trying to figure out, I know that the shows, they pour the chocolate into the mold and then they scrape it across and to make everything even. And I don't do that. I just pour them in one little mold piece at a time, or scoop it in with a spoon. But in order to make these molds and fill in just a section of it, because I didn't want to fill everything in, I just finished off this stevia, and I cleaned this out, and I melted my white chocolate, and I added extra coconut oil, because coconut oil, again, it has a higher melting point, or I think it's a lower melting point. It melts more easily, and it stays in a more liquid state in this type of temperature. Then I mixed the berry and I stuck it in here, and I just used the dropper to fill in the cavity where I wanted it. So I was able to get just the center filled with this. I let that freeze a little bit. Then I put the rest of the chocolate in, and then I let it freeze for over an hour. I have tried where I make the chocolate first. So I make the chocolates and then take it out and get a parchment, a pastry bag. Actually, I don't cook. I'm not a chef, so I don't remember what they are, but where you just have the attachments, and you like an icing bag. I have put that in there and tried to put that over the chocolate and then freeze it. But when you do it in that way, in that step, the chocolate that you've added to the top will just come right off. So if you bite into the chocolate, whatever you've added afterwards comes off. It's better if you line the cavity of your mold first with the decoration you want, freeze that, bring it back out, put the chocolate in, and then freeze it together. When it comes out then and you take a bite into that chocolate, that decoration isn't going to come off. It's going to stay connected, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see a question in the chat that asks, what brand of collagen do you use?
I like a lot of different ones. This one I think is Earth's. This one's Garden of Life. I also like Bulletproof, the Bulletproof collagen. And a lot of them have coconut in it. So they'll have MCT oil. So if you don't mind, or coconut milk. So if you don't mind that coconutty flavor, those are really good. It's good to get the medium chain triglycerides, which is what the coconut oil adds. It's good to get that in there as well as the collagen. So that's good for joints and tendons.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you what the benefit was to the collagen protein.
Collagen is used by your body. It's what it's a connector. People will say, well, it's a connector, but it can connect things as big as your tendons and your ligaments to your muscles. So it's that stretchiness that allows your tendons and ligaments to adjust with your muscle and connection to the bone. But it's also small, like the cells in your muscles and skin, maybe around your eyes. So where you might have wrinkles, which I do, that can be a loss. That elasticity that we lose is our body losing some of its collagen production, because we're supposed to produce that ourselves and keep our skin, nail, hairs, muscles, tendons, and ligaments all healthy. But you are what you eat. So if we don't have a lot of bone broth, if we don't eat a chicken leg and sometimes get some of the tendons with that chicken leg, then we're not taking in some of those resources we need to build those. And so the collagen powder just supplements our body's natural ability to create the collagen it needs to be mobile and flexible and have good joint health and good skin elasticity.
I also wanted to point out, as Denise commented in the chat, that if you want to try any of these chocolates for Easter, Maureen has her kits available for ordering, and they're only discounted through today. So if you'd like to make an order, we have the form. Both, I put it in our Zoom chat, and it's also linked on our website under the event description. So if you're interested in making your own chocolates and you haven't already ordered a kit, I would highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't, you don't have to order by today. If you want it for Easter, if you could order it by next Saturday, I'll just say that's a deadline, say April 9th. And you see the ingredients. This is what I use. I actually did not mention the powder. Sometimes I'll add the cacao powder to the kit, and that's just going to give it a stronger chocolate flavor. This will melt just as we melt the paste and the cacao butter together with the coconut oil. The powder melts in. And these are actually really high in fiber, which I wouldn't have really thought. If I look at the Cacao Nibs, for example, this is just chocolate, right? Actually, the beans might even be a better one to look at. Dietary fiber is 9 grams, sugar 0. So naturally, cacao beans are high in fiber. They are high in fat, but they have a lot of good fatty acid profile, we would say, as well as the nutrients that support your endocrine system, your serotonin and dopamine. It has a substance called PEA, which they call the love compound, that is beneficial for your heart and just balancing hormones and emotions. This has 1 teaspoon has 1 gram of fiber. So if we're supposed to have 25 grams of fiber a day. Don't think I could have that much cacao nibs, because that would be, 24 teaspoons, that's 8 tablespoons of this a day. But it is an easy way, if you even add 1 or 2, of adding into what you already have to get your daily dietary fiber.
So Maureen, you have a lot of packages and ingredients. Can you get like downsized versions for some of us that would just want to make it from time to time without it going bad? I mean, how much does a bag, last? Like how many chocolates?
With all, I guess where's the paste? So this is a pound. This Vivipura, it's, I think, $22 a pound. And I would get 5 batches of these out of it.
Oh.
And then this makes about 24 chocolates.
Okay. So that's not bad.
And then you get, the cacao butter. Again, that's by the pound, and you'd use less because this is 3 ounces. That would be 1. So it's actually kind of easy to calculate.
Right. Okay.
And then you have the molds, coconut oil, and then whatever fun stuff you want to put in there, and your sweetener.
But if you get the kit from Maureen, you can get refills for less. Bring her back your jar. You already have the mold, and she'll give you the ingredients.
Yes.
I have a question about the kits. You have the honey bliss and the maple syrup kit. So, and then you have flavors. So the honey bliss kit has honey as a sweetener, and the maple syrup kit has maple syrup as a sweetener.
Yes.
And the other small things are the berry and mint flavors.
So that would be an addition. So if you wanted...
So altogether, if you get 1 kit and 1 flavor, it's about $28, which sounds very reasonable to me. How much chocolate does that make?
It makes about 24 chocolates.
Oh, well, that's very good. Have you seen what they're charging for chocolates at chocolate shops these days?
Mm-hmm.
No, I know there's chocolate and tomatoes, or tomatoes and chocolates. That farm, it's a farm down in Potomac. I have actually not paid that much attention, so I apologize if I'm not sure exactly where he is. But he's well known for his chocolates and his truffles. And the Watershed Cafe sold them one time, and I bought them because I wanted to know, because so many people had told me how great they were. And they were good, and they were pretty big truffles, but I got 4 of them for $11.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, and I don't know if he uses, this is the highest quality I can find without buying my own grinder, because that's the next step.
Right.
You buy the stone grinder, because there's a lot of cool, yummy stuff out there that I've tried. So yeah, I mean, it runs the gamut.
Thank you so much. I really love this presentation. I'll definitely be back.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's always so interesting. And I wish we were in person so we could taste.
Yes, because you wouldn't be able to.
I'm like, oh my gosh, she's breaking these open and I just want to bite into one.
They're really good.
Yeah, they are.
Of course, now I can lick my fingers and you don't have to worry, because you're not going to be eating any of them.
Right.
that I touch. But it's interesting, this here, so this is the actual pod, and this is the bean, and it's not as yummy as I would think. And I don't know if it's because it's freeze dried. No, I'm not going to sleep tonight, but so that's the bean inside. But the bean is, it's bitter. You know, the beans are bitter. And what I like about some of these pastes up here, as you can see, I get 90% cacao. I don't necessarily like them sweet. And that's what I like about these. They have a flavor of their own. It's not just bitter. You know, bite into it like, oh, baking cocoa. You know, it's got its own kind of fruity undertones, I guess, like a fine wine. It's a little tangy, but next time we're in person, if I have these, if I can still get them, you can try that.
That would
Maureen,
be fun.
I got a kit of your chocolate and a bottle of red wine at the auction.
That's a pretty good combo.
It was, yeah.
It's gone, huh?
It's gone. It's gone.
I have your honey kit right over there.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's always so interesting.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Anytime I can share anything
Really to
about food.
Hear the nutrition part, you know, and what we miss from the run-of-the-mill chocolate and what we get from the more pure chocolate.
And actually, if we don't have time to see that little video clip, but I can share it to Poolsville Seniors Facebook page. But he just, and I have to find the original, but the one that I have, it's just a little short talk. This person is saying that the studies have come out showing that cacao will actually help you develop, build your stem cells. So we all want to continue production of our stem cells because that helps keeps us young. And he said, all you need is 2 cups of hot cocoa every day, but it's some very small amount. I don't think it was a gram. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but he said it's equivalent to about 3 chocolate, you know, good sized chocolate chips in each cup, which is not a lot, but still, it's kind of cool if you just want to leave the sugar out, which is inflammatory, and you have the cacao and put the right stuff in there, and you have a pretty good health food, a longevity food, a nourishing food. So it's fun.
Maureen, I want you to do another session on hot chocolate because I have been diagnosed with osteoporosis, and so I love hot chocolate, but the calories just seem to be ridiculous, and I don't want to be fat. So if you can do like, figure out a way to make hot chocolate, come up with a hot chocolate kit that we can buy from you that has all this really good nutritional stuff. That would be wonderful. It would certainly beat Swiss Miss, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, actually I have plans for that.
Oh,
I already have that in the works.
Yay!
Well, put me on the list, the mailing list then.
Okay, will do.
Come back during hot chocolate season.
Yeah, we'll look
winter.
forward to getting the video and hearing about your hot chocolate, and we'll be sure to share all of that when it comes out on our Facebook page. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's presentation as much as I did and learned something new. And of course, as always, if you think of any questions later, you can email us at info@poolsvilleseniors.org and we can pass them on to Maureen for you.
Definitely.
If you'd like to unmute or turn on your camera to say goodbye, now's the time. And if you're joining us on Facebook Live, please leave a like and a comment. We'd like to thank Maureen for her presentation tonight, as well as our ongoing sponsors and contributors that help us keep our programs going because we love putting them on for you. And if you enjoyed tonight's program, please consider joining us for more upcoming events. We'll be back this time next week with Meet the Oddfellows. And as always, you can find more info and registration at poolsvilleseniors.org. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you very much.